Stop scrolling for 60 seconds. Because I need you to imagine something that sounds impossible, but by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how it happens to real people every single year. You wake up tomorrow morning in the same bed. Same apartment. Same alarm clock screaming at 6:45. Same chipped coffee mug on the counter. Nothing around you has changed. Except one thing. Somewhere, in an account you barely remember opening, there is now $650 million. No press release. No confetti. No phone call from a lawyer in a movie-perfect suit. Just a number, sitting quietly, waiting for you to notice it. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. If this happened to you right now, the smartest move, the only move that keeps you alive, sane, and actually rich in 10 years instead of ruined, is to tell almost no one. Every person who learns your number becomes a variable you can no longer control. I've thought about this more than most people. Not as a fantasy. As a practical question, what does real, permanent security actually require, once the money stops being the problem and privacy becomes the problem instead? 10 decisions. In order from the least surprising to the one that most people never see coming, and that's exactly why it works. Leave a like. Subscribe, and let's get into it. Decision number 10, the phone stays face down. Start here because this one seems obvious until you understand the specific detail that makes it work, and without that detail, it doesn't work at all. You don't feel the money arrive. That's the first surprise. Maybe it's an inheritance from a relative you barely knew, tied up for years in a trust that just matured. Maybe it's equity from a startup you left 5 years ago, quietly acquired in a deal you weren't paying attention to. Maybe it's a settlement, a licensing deal, a crypto position you forgot you had. The origin doesn't matter as much as what happens next inside your head. You check the number twice. Then a third time. You close the laptop. You open it again. $650 million. For most people, the fantasy stops here, the montage of yachts and watches and a new personality. But real silent wealth doesn't start with spending. It starts with a single, quiet, almost unremarkable decision. I am not going to tell anyone. Not your best friend. Not your parents. Not the person you're dating. Not even, at first, a spouse, if you have hesitations about how they'd react. This isn't paranoia. It's arithmetic. Money this size doesn't just change your bank account. It changes the chemistry of every room you walk into, the second people know about it. What fails? Reacting visibly. A gasp at the wrong moment, a phone left face up on a table, a change in tone nobody can quite place. The habit you build in week 1 is screen down, face neutral, voice unchanged, is the habit that protects everything else for years. So the silent millionaire's first move isn't a purchase. It's a policy. Information is now the most valuable asset you own, more valuable than the money itself, because the money can be replaced. Trust, once broken, cannot. Decision number 9, the invisible scaffolding. Now decision 9, the one nobody photographs for a reason. Building the structure before the spending. Here's what almost nobody understands about extreme wealth until they're inside it. Money at this scale doesn't sit in a checking account with your name on it. That would be insane, and functionally impossible to manage. The first weeks of your new life are spent not spending, but structuring. You find an estate attorney not through a Google search, but through a quiet referral, because at this level, reputations move through whispers, not advertisements. You form a family office, even if that family is currently just you. You set up a revocable living trust, and inside it, layers of LLCs, each one a wall between your name and the assets it holds. The house you eventually buy isn't owned by you. It's owned by Meridian Holdings LLC or some equally forgettable name, administered by attorneys bound by confidentiality. If someone searches property records, they find a shell company, not a person. You open accounts across multiple institutions instead of concentrating everything in one place. You hire a fiduciary financial advisor, legally obligated to act in your interest, and you begin the unglamorous work of diversification: index funds, municipal bonds, real estate, cash reserves in short-term treasuries. None of this looks like the fantasy. There's no private jet in this chapter. There are PDFs. There are signatures. There are hour-long calls about liability umbrellas and asset protection trusts in states with favorable laws. You run background checks on your own attorney. You sign NDAs with everyone, the accountant, the property manager, even the contractor who renovates your kitchen. Not because you expect betrayal. Because a signed NDA changes the psychology of the person holding it. The people who skip this step, who go straight to spending, are the same people you read about years later, broke again, wondering where it all went. Decision number 8: erasing the digital trail. Decision 8. The one that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with whether anyone can ever find you. The digital ghost. In the modern world, your money isn't the only thing that needs to be hidden. Your data trail does too. You audit your own digital footprint the way a hacker would. You Google yourself, actually Google yourself, the way a stranger might. You submit opt-out requests to data broker sites, the ones that sell your home address and family members' names for $20. It takes months, working through dozens of these sites one by one, because a determined stranger with an afternoon shouldn't be able to find your front door. You separate your digital life into compartments that never touch each other. One email for the boring, visible version of you. A completely different email, on a different provider, tied to nothing public, for anything related to the trusts, the accounts, the family office. A password manager. Unique credentials. Two-factor authentication on everything. You think twice before posting anything with a visible location. That photo from vacation waits until you've left. You resist photographing the new watch, the upgraded car, because a single geotagged photo has, in real documented cases, been enough for someone to work out exactly where a wealthy person lives. It sounds paranoid until you remember that paranoid and prepared often look identical from the outside, and only one of them keeps you safe. Decision number 7: the life that doesn't change. Decision 7, and this is where the story diverges hardest from what you'd expect. Keeping the outer shell identical. You keep your job. Or at least, you keep showing up somewhere, doing something, for a while. This isn't sentimentality. It's camouflage, and it's psychology. A sudden, unexplained disappearance from work, from your usual coffee shop, from the gym you've gone to for 3 years, that's the kind of visible change that makes people ask questions. Questions lead to guesses. Guesses spread. You still drive the same car, even though you could buy the dealership. You still split a bill at dinner, sometimes deliberately underpaying by $1 or $2, because a person who suddenly overpays for everything raises eyebrows just as fast as someone flashing cash. Sudden wealth syndrome is a documented pattern in lottery winners and inheritance recipients. Paranoia, isolation, impulsive spending used to fill an emotional void, a strange, disorienting guilt for having so much when everyone around you has so little. Keeping life outwardly normal isn't just about hiding the money from others. It's about hiding, for a while, from the vertigo of the money yourself. This is wealth without a witness. And there is something strange and almost sacred about experiencing relief, security, and freedom with absolutely no audience to perform it for. Decision number 6: who earns the right to know? Decision 6. Eventually, some people have to know. The question is which ones, and in what order. The circle that expands by design, never by accident. The lawyer knows, bound by privilege. The accountant knows, bound by professional confidentiality. The financial advisor knows. Maybe, eventually, one sibling knows, chosen carefully, after months of watching how they handle smaller pieces of trust. If you're in a relationship, this becomes one of the harder chapters. Some choose full transparency early. Others wait, testing whether the partnership survives ordinary stress, job loss, family conflict, before adding a variable as heavy as 9 figures into the mix. What holds across almost every case, they almost never tell someone in the first few months of dating, and they almost always tell a long-term spouse eventually, because secrecy inside a marriage curdles into something worse than the risk it was meant to prevent. Parents are their own category. Some silent millionaires never tell their parents, not out of distrust, but to protect them from the anxiety of guarding a secret. Others quietly pay off a parent's mortgage without ever explaining exactly how. The rule that holds across almost every silent millionaire's life: the number of people who know your net worth should always be smaller than the number of people you trust with your literal safety. At this scale, those two lists start to mean the same thing. Let me give you a moment almost every silent millionaire eventually lives through. It's a Tuesday night. You're at a friend's apartment, half watching a movie, when your phone buzzes on the coffee table. A notification from your family office's secure app: a 9-figure transfer between trust accounts just cleared. Routine. But the screen lights up for exactly 2 seconds before you flip it face down, and in that window, your friend glances over. What was that? You look like you just saw a ghost. Your heart does something uncomfortable. You laugh a real laugh, practiced by now, and say something forgettable. Bank app being annoying about a subscription. They nod. They believe you. The movie continues. Nobody in that room ever learns what actually flashed across that screen. That's not luck. That's a reflex, built the same way an athlete builds muscle memory: hundreds of small, unremarkable decisions, repeated so often they stop feeling like decisions at all. Decision number 5, the taxes nobody glamorizes. Decision 5. Nobody makes a movie about this part, but it might be the single most important chapter in the entire story. What the government already knows. None of this is about evasion. Evasion is illegal, it's traceable, and eventually, almost always, it's caught. The entire game silent millionaires actually play is called tax avoidance, the completely legal art of arranging your affairs so you owe exactly what the law requires, using tools the law itself provides. You structure investment sales around long-term capital gains. You use tax loss harvesting every December, almost mechanically. You explore donor-advised funds in charitable trusts that reduce your taxable estate while still generating income during your lifetime. If you own real estate, a 1031 exchange lets you defer capital gains by rolling proceeds directly into another property, a strategy investors have used for decades, completely above board. You pay a team, several accountants, sometimes a dedicated tax attorney, a substantial annual retainer, and it is, without question, the best money you spend all year. The difference between sloppy tax planning and precise tax planning, at this scale, isn't thousands of dollars. It's millions. Every year. Compounding. And you keep records. Meticulous, obsessive records, because the biggest legal risk facing someone with unexplained wealth isn't a nosy neighbor. It's an audit with a paper trail that doesn't hold together. Decision number 4, money that spends itself silently. Decision 4. By year 2 or 3, the money starts moving in ways that never generate a headline. Real estate, travel, and giving with no name attached. You buy real estate, but not the kind that gets photographed for a magazine. A quiet property under a trust name, chosen for privacy over prestige, high walls, long driveways, towns where new arrivals aren't unusual enough to gossip about. You travel in ways that don't scream money: business class instead of a private jet for most trips, boutique hotels instead of chains where staff are trained to recognize wealth. You start giving quietly, almost compulsively. You fund a scholarship through an anonymous donor-advised fund. You pay a stranger's medical bill after overhearing a conversation in a hospital waiting room, using a foundation with a name that reveals nothing. Anonymous giving produces a satisfaction public giving never could, because the gratitude you feel isn't for an audience. It's real, because no one's watching. You build a spending policy, a disciplined system where a fixed percentage of your portfolio's growth, not the principal, funds your annual life. $650 million invested conservatively can generate tens of millions a year without you ever touching the core. Spend from growth, protect the principal, and the fortune compounds, largely immune to your own worst impulses. Decision number 3, the trap of wanting more. Decision 3. The quieter danger, the one that creeps in slower than being discovered. Lifestyle inflation. The first watch is modest. The first upgraded flight is business, not first. But wealth has a gravitational pull, and every silent millionaire eventually feels it, the temptation to let the visible version of their life creep just slightly closer to what's actually true. The disciplined ones set hard rules early, before the temptation gets loud. A fixed, modest percentage of net worth per year for personal spending, reviewed annually, never touched outside that budget no matter how good a deal looks. Here's what almost nobody making this journey expects: the danger was never really running out of money. At $650 million, invested reasonably, that's nearly impossible to do by accident. The real danger is letting the visible life expand until it no longer matches the story you've told everyone around you, until the seams show not because someone investigated, but because you simply stopped being careful. Before the final decision, I need you to pay attention to this. Structuring the money is one decision. Staying disciplined for the next 40 years is the framework that determines everything else. So I put together a complete blueprint for building and protecting wealth privately: the trusts, the entities, the tax structures, the digital security checklist, and the exact order to set them up in, whether you're starting with 600,000 or 600 million. Step by step. Built for real structures, not fantasy spending. Not for people who already have a family office on retainer, for the person building real, durable privacy from wherever they're starting right now. The link is in the description. Click it before you actually need it. Now, the final decision. This is the one most people never plan for. And that is exactly, precisely, completely why it matters most. Decision number 1: living with the weight nobody warns you about. I know what you're expecting. And I'm going to address it directly before making the argument. The hardest part was never the money. It was the loneliness. Not the sad, cinematic loneliness of an empty mansion, the specific, structural loneliness of never being able to be fully known by most of the people in your life. Every friendship now carries a silent asterisk. Every kindness you extend, you privately wonder, would I still be doing this if they knew? Every new person who enters your life gets quietly, instinctively evaluated: do they like me, or would they like the number, if they knew it existed? This is the tax nobody tells you about. Not the IRS, the actual, human tax of vigilance. The exhausting mental labor of maintaining two lives simultaneously, the visible one and the real one, making sure the seams never show. And yet, almost universally, the people who've actually lived this life will tell you the trade was worth it. Because the alternative, the version where everyone knows, where every relationship becomes tinged with need or resentment, where every family gathering becomes a negotiation, is worse. Visible wealth invites a kind of chaos that silent wealth simply sidesteps. There's a strange, specific peace that settles in eventually, the peace of a person who has enough, who is safe, who could disappear from public life entirely and never be found, because there was never a public trail to begin with. It's not the fantasy of yachts and headlines. It's something quieter, and in its own way, something better: the freedom to live an ordinary-looking life while carrying an extraordinary amount of security underneath it, known to almost no one, threatened by almost nothing. You will never see this person on a magazine cover. That's the entire point. The quietest kind of wealth is the kind that survives. 10 decisions. 1 pattern. None of them protect you because they look impressive. All of them protect you because of a specific characteristic that makes you less visible, less traceable, less interesting to the people and systems that could take this away from you. The wealth that gets shown off is the wealth everyone circles. The wealth nobody knows about is the wealth that lasts. You don't have $650 million. Statistically, you probably never will, and neither will I. But the discipline inside this story isn't really about the number. It's about a smaller, more universal question: what would you do differently if you knew your financial future was permanently secure? Would you still perform the anxious version of yourself at work? Would you still measure your worth by what other people could see? Protect what you're building before you show it off. Build the structure before the show. Let the people who matter earn the right to know your real situation, instead of announcing it to everyone at once. Leave a like if this changed how you think about wealth and privacy. Subscribe, there's more coming that most channels won't touch. Check the link with the blueprint and never forget. Build the structure before you need it. See you in the next one.